Happy Father's Day, everybody. My name's Charles. Welcome back aboard my boat, my 1979 38-foot Catalina. And we have some boat work to do, some fixing to do. But it is Father's Day weekend, so happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And, or any parental figure, really, that takes their kid playing catch. Anyway, we have some boat fixing to do. We have to fix our motor. So here is our flexible coupling thingamajigger that has to go in between our prop shaft and our transmission coupler thing, flange, all that fun stuff. But that's down way over there, and it's going to be a lot of greasy. Oh, and the engine's not mounted down, all sorts of fun stuff. So we're going to kind of toy with that. That's the purpose of my visit this weekend. But I thought while I was up here, I would also kind of give a full boat tour, a little bit better boat tour from when we had it, now that we've had a chance to get things kind of squared away, with the exception of things like this that are all in the way, but that's okay. That's just, there's nothing crazy there. That's just kind of, well, extra sails and things. So before we get all greasy doing the fixing, we'll do kind of a little bit of a walk around of the boat, give you an idea of what we're looking at, what we need to change, things that need to get fixed, all that fun stuff. And that's a pretty looking boat out there. Hang on. I didn't see this guy earlier. Look at this thing. You see her? Huh. Now, it is a very nice day. It has not been raining today, so there are a lot of people up here working on their boats. So we're going to do our tour inside, at least to start with. And I guess we'll start at the front. So follow me to the V-berth. So I'm going to bring a spotlight with me, this guy right here, just in case it's a little bit dark, right? So here we go. Now it is a fairly big V-berth. I mean, it's 6 feet long. I'm 6 feet tall, and I make it all the way here. Now up in this cupboard, we do have just the underneath of the V-berth. So we've got a hose there for a wash down for the anchor chain. We've got some extra goodies in there, and I'm not sure where that goes. I have to go look at it. And then right there we have a secondary shore power inlet, and that's going to be important later on. But otherwise, there's the bottom of our chain locker. Now if we back up out of the V-berth, on the left port side of the boat we've got a head, just like so, with standard bathroom stuff. Now we do have that faucet handle does pull out, and that turns into a shower. We've got a drain in the floor somewhere under here. This does drain. And then we've got obviously our toilet and shower racks and things like that. Now it looks like something actually broke here. It looks like this actually did come down all the way, but that's okay. Over on this side, we have more storage down here. So we have things in here like, I do want to put up my things. We've got some no damp stuff. We've got some extra winch kits. We've got some stuff here. I do have my barometer and things that I really would like to put up here. Just haven't gotten around to doing that. Maybe we'll leave them out. Let's take him out. This is the barometer. That's the clock. But let's take them out, and we're going to set them there because I really would like to have them up there. It would look really nice. I wish the TV sat a little lower, but still I think that'll be kind of nice. So again, just standard stuff for there. And we've got a cabinet down here for more stuff. I've got some butyl tape. We've got some extra sailcloth, spare canisters down here for our big buddy heater here. He came in handy during the trip back from Detroit, but he can stay down there for now. Then in here we've basically got a hanging locker for things like our inflatable vests. I think, hey, there's my other hat. Is it in here? It is. I've got my nice jacket there and some rain gear, stuff like that. Nothing too crazy, just basically a hanging locker there. Moving forward, this is down the starboard side of the boat, and we'll get to the rest of this here in a bit. But same thing, we've got some cabinets up here with some goodies in it, an old spotlight, and I've been keeping some gloves and things. It's good to remember that because I'm going to need them. This one over here is just extra things, binoculars. I bought a couple of these. These are just two-way walkie-talkies, nothing crazy. I think they're GMRS, but I can't swear to it. I bought them for doing the canal. Just some shelves, and obviously I brought some tools down from last time I was down here working on things. That's another jigsaw. That's the jigsaw I bought to cut out this panel. So while we're here, let's talk about electrics. Now when I bought the boat, there were a couple of lead acid house batteries and then a lead acid starter battery. And I knew that I was going to be switching over to lithium as far as the house battery goes, which I did. And I bought a new blue top Optima battery for the starting battery, which is fine. That has no problems. Now we did run into some other hiccups though, and that is this boat had one of those red 1, 2 both off switches for your battery banks. Now with lead acid batteries, that was fine. Because basically the way that it was wired, it was that, you know, the starter battery was number 1, the house battery was number 2. Now, for example, if you set the switch to number 1, you were running off the starter battery. Start the engine, and then the alternator was backfeeding through the switch and charging whichever battery was hooked up. So if you had it hooked to number 1, i.e. your starter battery, that's what the alternator was charging. And if you hooked it to number 2, your house bank was then charging from the alternator instead. And that's fine if you were using lead acid batteries for both banks, but because I have different battery technology, that wasn't going to work. I did not want to have this old alternator trying to charge my lithium battery bank. Bad things can happen. Look it up. So we did switch that around. I did finally trace all the wires out and things way back when. And the house battery is now completely separated from the starter battery. So the starter battery will start the engine. The alternator will charge the starting battery, but it will not cannot ever touch the house battery, which is great. And then the house battery only feeds our breaker panel over here, our DC panel, as well as an inverter. So we'll get to that here in a second, but that's how I've got it broken out. Everything is dedicated that way. Turning it back around to show you the panel. We have a Victron battery monitor up here. Now, of course, we're in full sunlight and the solar's out, so it's actually reading a little bit higher than the bank has actually got. Down here, we've got an on-off switch, remote on-off for our inverter. So you can hear that in the background turning on. And then you can see our voltage dropping a little bit now that the inverter is firing up. But the fan will go off here in a second. And then this over here, mind my electrical tape. This is just a very, well, I'd say it's a cheap panel, but it's not. It's still $170, I think I paid for it. But it's better than the original one that was here. There was a big rat's nest behind this of just everything was a mess. So I pulled all that out and I took this panel, I put this panel in, and we broke out everything that we had as far as things like that goes. So we do have a water pump. We have pressurized water. The only problem though is our anchor light doesn't work. Our spreader lights don't work. Our steaming light, I don't even think I have one yet, but that doesn't work. But our cabin lights work, our water pump works, our nav lights do work, and our instruments work. Our instruments are up here on the top. We'll show you that in a minute. So we'll talk a little bit more about why that's not working once we get done with the overall tour. We got a new standard Horizon radio over here, and then up under here is an AIS-B transmitter or transceiver, if you will. So that puts off an AIS signal so I can see where my boat is at all times. Or, more to the point, so other people can see where my boat is, mainly so I don't get run over in the middle of the night. Now that AIS would be considered a luxury item. It was about $1,000, and it's not a requirement on a boat, not even a boat of a larger size like this 38. What it was for me though was peace of mind coming down through the Detroit River, coming across the Great Lakes, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, potentially in the middle of the night. Now, for example, our first night down, when we left Detroit, we came down the river and we just kept sailing all through the night. Well, having an AIS receiver is great because you can see where other ships are. Ships that are transmitting, like larger cargo ships and tankers and things, you can see them because they're always transmitting an AIS signal. But if you're not transmitting, they can't see you back. So I wanted something that would quite literally put me on the map when it came to other boats around, being able to see that, hey, there is a boat coming up in the middle of the lake at 4 in the morning in pitch black. We did have our lights on, obviously, but still, it's nice to have that extra thing for anyone that's watching on the map. So that was an extra peace of mind thing that wasn't required. A lot of the stuff that I bought for the boat wasn't required, but it was something I wanted to do while we were getting at it. Now that's the starboard side. There is a quarter berth that goes back. Right now it's just full of sails. So that's our spare head sail. And then this is a spinnaker. Normally these sit up in the V berth, but I had everything moved around last week and I didn't get them up there. So that's that. Now we do have this nice little chart table here. As you can see, we do have some stuff in it, but not a lot. And then just some, drawers. Moving around under here, we do have a battery charger that we're not using anymore, but underneath this quarter berth, we also have our diesel tank, as well as our hot water heater tank, which is a 6-gallon hot water heater. I don't know how it works yet, but supposedly it's hot water on the boat. Cool. Under here is our Yanmar Q2HM20, Q20H, I don't remember what it is, 2Q20HM, MH, something. There's a motor under this thing. Over here, we just have a nice little port galley. And then we do have some cushions. These can go out here in the cockpit. And then down here, for example, there is our Renogy inverter. Just kind of chilling. Did kind of screw that up a little bit. We'll talk about that in a bit. We've got a little coffee maker. I don't drink this stuff, but we do have a bunch of little K-cup things because my uncle and my brother did drink coffee and stuff like that on the trip. So wanted something for them to keep themselves occupied with. We do have an ice box back here under here. Does work, I think, but we're not using that. We'll talk about that in a second. We have a sink. This is our pressurized water system. Same thing, we do have a hose that we can pull out. And then this is actually hooked to a foot pedal down under that red rope right there. So this is actually raw water coming in from outside. Now, if I were to do that right now, I don't know if you can see how nasty that water is. But yeah, in the river, this water is absolutely horrible in here in the marinas and stuff. Once you get out to the lake, it's beautiful. We'll take the drone up and we'll show you that in a little while. But for now, we're not going to use that because we don't want mud in here. Now, the rest of the port side, we got more shelves. A couple of my spare stanchions. I did buy new ones to replace some broken ones we had when we got the boat. I had a couple left over. Those are up there. More closet space. A new smart TV. And then our large wraparound settee over here. And this table, which drops down. The only thing I wish the table mount. I wish this leg was like telescoping or telescoping, however you want to pronounce that word, I guess. It isn't. And you have to take the table off of the leg, and then there's a smaller one that you put in so that this table can actually rest down on this lip to turn this into basically a queen-size bed almost. It does work well, but it's just kind of annoying that way. The other annoying part is you can see my cooler is a little too tall, so you can't leave the cooler in here when you got the bed down. It is what it is, but that's all right. You may notice, or if you haven't watched any of my other stuff, you might not notice, this is not my original cooler. This is a new cooler. It's exactly the same as the old cooler, only with a different brand name on it. And I thought I broke my old one, so I bought a new one, and it's working fine. Right now, this cord just goes right up and is just plugged directly in back there. This runs 24/7. It is never unplugged, so we have cold water every time we come to the boat. Now, as far as the inside of the boat goes, that's basically it for the inside. There's really nothing crazy going on in here. Now, there are some things we do want to keep fixing, though. For example, when we put the batteries in, we do have the optimal blue top and my eco-worthy 280 amp hour lithium battery, but we do need to go through and refuse everything because not everything is properly fused. It was all done in a hurry to get this boat here. Now that the boat is here, we can go through and redo all that stuff. So that is one of the big things on the agenda, is to go ahead and tidy that all up. It's not that everything's not fused, it's a mess under there. So we're going to fix that up. We are going to remake our electrical panel over here at some point with a better DC panel. Now, another thing we have to fix is this shore power charging situation. There was one on the back corner of the boat. That was the standard one. Someone, I don't know if it was done at the factory or afterwards, but there's another one in the V-berth, cockpit locker above it there, the anchor locker above the V-berth, if you saw. And at some point, someone had disconnected the one back here, which is the traditional one, in favor of that one. Now, that's fine. I mean, I get it. You know, maybe the gentleman that had it, or one of the gentlemen had it, it was bow in. That's where the pedestal was. It might have been just easier to run that. That's fine. But in my case, when I wired my inverter in, I wired it into AC loads. And unfortunately, only this side of the boat started working because two things happened. One is that I thought that the AC side came from the panel where the original AC went into, went up the boat, around the V-berth, and then back down this side. And turns out it didn't. It actually just, one branch went this way and another branch came over here and went to this way, and I didn't realize that. So I don't have that branch, this port side branch, actually wired at all. The other problem we ran into is that shore power inlet. I thought I was connecting into the shore power inlet that we were using up there, and turns out I wasn't. So I don't know what I hooked to, but there is a small chance that I may have accidentally hooked into the rear shore power inlet wire for my inverter. Now this inverter has a bypass, so when the shore power is plugged in, it'll bypass the inverter function and use the shore power connection to feed 120 out. And then if you disconnect the shore power, it goes into inverter mode, and then the inverter takes care of that by using your house bank and all that fun stuff. And maybe I inadvertently wired the wrong one in, or I just wired something completely wrong. I didn't have a good continuity test. I thought I had everything figured out, and clearly I was wrong. So we do have to fix that at some point too. What else we do have to fix? We do also have to fix the wiring for the mast, but we're not going to be able to do that until we pull the mast this winter. Now down here at the base of the mast, under the seat here, that's where the black water tank is. That's where your holding tank is for the bathroom. But under this little hatch down here is the access to the wiring that goes up the mast. But it's all been cut so short and electrical taped and everything that it's basically impossible to trace any wiring out. But it also looks like it's been done kind of shoddily after some point. So basically my mast lights aren't working at all. They sort of worked like day one, but then they stopped. And as I've traced everything out, there's no ground going up the mast at all. I can't find a ground going up there, or at least a ground that is going up the mast is not actually being grounded. And we're not getting a grounded signal up the mast to the lights that need to be grounded. So while I have everything hooked up to our panel back here, as far as the wiring goes, as far as the switch goes, as far as the lights go, we don't have actually any power going up to it. Now, if I jumpered power, sure, we would get that up there. Wow, that's a nice Sun Odyssey next to me. These boats weren't here last time I was here, so I'm catching up on all the boats that are around here. So short version is the mast wiring needs to be redone, but I can't do that until I pull the mast out. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to rewire all new lights and everything up the mast anyway. New steaming deck light. Maybe I'll do away with the spreader lights and just put the steaming deck light on. A new LED anchor light. And then who knows what else. We'll see. But that is something that we do need to do. Now, as far as the rest of the boat goes, we'll take care of that later. But for now, we're going to get into this whole fixing of the boat thing. So let me show you what's going on. Here she is in all her glory. She's actually sitting a little high right now, which is a little strange. And that's because, well, we had to put new motor mounts on, and they're not completely done yet. And the motor's not completely in the right spot yet. There's a whole bunch going on, so let me tell you why. So to fill you in case you missed out on the part of the boat trip that got her here, at one point, I think it was right around trying to go through the Welland Canal, somewhere around that point, my brother and my dad were on the boat, and they felt a small vibration kick up, and they thought maybe that was the folding prop that didn't open all the way and was off balance and causing a vibration. It did eventually clear up after a little bit, not like a long time, but it did clear up, so they didn't really think much of it, just figured maybe something had stuck on the prop. When they got all the way here to Rochester, however, they were getting ready to come into the inlet of the lake here, or from the lake into the river, and the same problem happened, but this time didn't get any better. And they made it in here to the fuel dock, they tied up, and then they had the marina guys actually tow them over here in the morning, or maybe they went straight to the haul out. I don't remember exactly. I do know that that first night, though, they heard the bilge pump going off. Now the bilge pump in here is automatic. It does have an automatic float switch. So if the bilge starts filling up with water or takes on just enough water, the float will kick on and the switch will activate and the bilge will pump that extra water over the side. Now this boat is a relatively dry boat as far as we've gone. We haven't really heard the bilge ever. So that's good. That's a good thing. You don't want to have water in your bilge. But my brother did say when he would take a shower, he would heat up water and then take a shower in that bathroom because it was really cold out. And, you know, the water would then drain in the bilge pump would kick on, the water would get pumped overboard. Well, he said while he was there that night, it was kicking on way more often than it should, especially considering it hadn't kicked on at all. So they started investigating, and I don't know if we're going to be able to see it, so I'll just tell you real quick. Where the prop shaft goes through the boat, there's a stern tube there, and there was essentially the rear motor mounts had kind of disintegrated themselves enough that, well, the prop shaft had also kind of gotten out of alignment. There was a bunch of bad things happened, and we cracked the stern tube enough that there was water leaking in and dripping down into the bilge and turning the bilge pump on. Anytime there's water coming in the boat that was not expected, not a good time. These are all the other ones. I was trying to see if I had them here. In short, though, the original mounts, basically, the holes had been drilled out, were too big for the mounts that were in it. The mounts that were in it were using like 1/2 inch size threaded bolts slash rods for the uprights, and accordingly sized nuts. Well, the hole on the motor mounts was actually too big. There were no washers used, so the vibration over time was quite literally like munching the nut. That sounds really bad. So the vibration over time was eventually causing the nut underneath the bracket to kind of cone shape itself out, grinding in metal shavings and everything. And yeah, bad things happened when those motor mounts got bad. So I bought 4 new mounts. These are 5/8 inch mounts, but the problem is they've changed the design just so slightly. So the mount in itself is basically the same, but the way that they've done it, the old mount, the bolt used to be pressed into the bushing. Now it's basically just a big bolt with a nut that locks it on. And that means on these mounts, you have 2 nuts instead of 1 on the bottom, which means you can't go as low as the original mounts were. And that's kind of getting to be a potential problem. The rear mounts, 2 bolts, fairly simple. We did end up having to do a couple things though. So we were hoping we could just, you know, unbolt the bracket and everything, and that worked fine. There were times though we did have to kind of elevate the rear of the engine just enough to get the bolts to line up properly. Especially once we took the brackets off, we needed something to hold the motor up. So what we did is we took one bracket off at a time, took one side off, and we supported the transmission with a rope down over the transmission and up through this hole that I'm in and up to a winch up there. Now, while I'm up here, I'll show you real quick. This is the problem that happened. So this is one of the old mounts, and you can see just what was going on here with this nut. And that is, I mean, this, you know, the bracket sat on here, but the hole was so big that it, over time and vibration and stuff, I mean, it literally just wore right through the nuts on this. So now you can't get the nut off of here. But what I was saying is, you see how this one is basically pressed in from the bottom and there's no nut here. This one nut was what you use to adjust your height of your bracket by using that nut up and down, which really wasn't being done. But there was no washer on top or anything like that. But on the new mounts, this isn't pressed in like this. It's actually just a through bolt with a nut holding that bolt in. And so there's a nut on the bottom. So for example, you can see how low this nut is. Well, there's not enough room for another nut under here, but there is another nut on these other brackets. So that's kind of where our problem is. But now that we've seen this, let me take you back into the cabin and I'll show you the front mounts and show you what kind of a pain in the nightmare those things were. So when it comes to these front mounts, and you can see what I'm talking about right down there with the double nut, right? So the one on the bottom, and then there's another one on the top. But the one on the bottom, you can't remove. But the problem with this front mount is I originally saw these 2 bolts right here, these 2 right here on the side, and thought, oh, okay, great, I'll just pull these off and we'll be good to go. Let me take this bar out of the way. This bar was here, but we take it off so we can get some more clearance. I thought these were the only 2, but if you look behind, you see there's one out right now, way back there. Right down somewhere, hard to see right there. There's one back there and there's one above it. So there's actually 4. This whole bracket on this front mount is a whole plate. And that whole plate has to come off in order to get the mount off. And this is the other thing I wanted to look at, because now I'm looking at this going, same thing on this side. Might not be a good thing to do. Now you can tell that the motor right now is not centered. You can look how close that one is right there to the stringer. So right here, and then you come over here and there's a lot more room. So this has to slide back and forth and up and down and all these other things. But this is where it's going to be a pain, because I'm by myself and I'm going to have to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. The other problem though, again, is these front mounts. I did buy these. I don't know if they're really going to do a whole lot of good though. So let me show you here in a second. I bought a whole box of these. These are supposed to be thinner than what's on there, but as I'm looking at it, it don't look a whole lot thinner. Let me take one off the top, because I think they're all basically the same. Okay, here's the one I just took off the top of the boat, or top of the bolt. They're exactly the freaking same. So that's not going to help us much. Now we wanted to avoid a repeat of the other mounts where the nut had basically just gotten wallowed out. See, I already lost it already. Where the shaft coming through and then the hole was just wearing this down. We wanted to avoid that this time around. A couple things that are going to help with that. Again, I bought a bunch of washers. They're around here somewhere. But the bigger thing on top of that is these holes now are drilled specifically to a 5/8 stud size, whereas the other ones were almost a 5/8. Like there wasn't much clearance that needed to be done. It just needed a tiny bit. But now the holes are a much tighter tolerance to the shaft. So worst case is without washers, we could set the bolt right back onto the, or set the nut right onto the bracket and use the nut as a leveler. Although these are all the way down as far as they can, so they can't go any lower. So that's a thing. We could take the one nut off and then use washers and shims on top of the other one to get that to a height, a size that's close. Now the problem is that we're talking nowhere near as precise as this needs to be. This really needs to be a lot tighter tolerance. But we're trying to figure out ways around this sort of stuff because I mean that, you know, that shaft can't go anywhere. The prop shaft can't go anywhere. It's not like we can change the angle of that. So it's a lot, but the problem is, again, as I said, if let's say we need to take these off, let's say these fronts are too high, let's say I take this somewhere and I have somebody machine it into half height, which is what I thought I was buying. I really thought that these were going to be a little bit narrower than what was already on it, and apparently no. Fine. But let's say, for example, that we needed to take the mount off to swap the bolt out for washers or what have you. Well, you have to take the whole mount off. You can't just, you know, put one on. Like, you have to take the whole thing off. Now in the back of the motor, again, relatively easy because it's just the two bolts. You just support the engine, you take the two bolts out, the bracket comes off, you take the mount off, you swap things out. But the fronts, every time you want to take a mount off, you have to take all four of those off, and you have to basically lift the front of the motor up as best as you can to relieve pressure and slide it and hope it doesn't fall off the stringer in the back. And it's a lot easier with two people that I don't have today. So that's a thing. So I'm still formulating my overall plan. But the first thing I need to do, I guess it's right. I guess these are about the right size. First thing I need to do is figure out which way this goes on there. There is a specific direction, and I don't remember. I wasn't here when we took the old one off, so I don't remember. I'm going to go through my old pictures on my phone and see if I have a picture of the old one in there. Maybe we'll get lucky so I can tell. I don't remember if this is exactly the same one or if this is a different design. I just don't know which, like, so these bolts are threaded and tapped in, so you can see inside there. There is a threaded insert, so even though you see inside there that it doesn't look threaded, there is actually a threaded insert molded into this piece. So there you go. I just don't know if this is coupler side, like this, or like this is prop shaft, and then, or if this is prop shaft. I don't know which one goes where. I think the spacing is the same on all of them. I'm just not sure which direction this goes. So we got to figure that out, and then we'll see if this thing even fits in there, and then that'll give us some, because the other thing too is, I mean, this thing's an inch thick, so it'll give us a better idea of where the motor needs to go as far as alignment goes. So let me figure this out, and we'll be back. All right, so it might be hard to see with the lighting down in here, but as you can see now, I have plenty of room to get a socket in here, and I am just now realizing that I think I grabbed, oh, there it is. So there we go. So we've got just enough room in here for that, and then I can put the motor back in place and slide it back down and see where we are in the grand scheme of things when it comes to lining this thing up. This is not going to be just a, hey, let's bolt this in and then just call it a day. We do want to make sure we get this thing as close as we can. I mean, it is a 40-year-old boat. You know, it's not going to be perfect, but we want to get it as close to perfect as we can when it comes to something like this. Because if you break something here, stuff back here breaks, boat sinks. quite literally. So this is, you can see like this is leftover extra resin and epoxy that we gooped in. We did actually rebuild the entire stern tube interior. Just there wasn't very much of the tube left on the inside. So we built that back up. My brother did that when he was here, built that back up so he could put the stuffing or the, you know, stern tube stucking, whatever the hell that thing is, and call it a day. Come to think of it, yeah, we're leaking a little bit out of the tube now, come to think of it. So that's, I can see it dripping. So, but I'm pretty sure that's coming right out of the stuffing box here. It hasn't been adjusted or anything, and that's new because I had actually pushed the shaft back a little bit. If I pull that back forward, it'll probably stop leaking again. Man, I hope it'll stop leaking again. Otherwise, I've completely made a mess of things. I'm 100% sure that it's just weeping through that like it normally would. And we may need to put new packing material in. Hard to say yet, but anyway, let me get this coupler on here and then we'll see what we can do. I've got the front mounts in. They're down in there with 2 washers. So we've got the nut on the very bottom and then 2 washers on top and then the bracket. So brackets are back on. I just have to push the motor back into place, and I got to kind of bounce back and forth up and down between me and the back to figure out left, right, up, down, and sideways, and then see how close we are to being lined up, and hope we don't have to do this too many more times. We obviously are going to have to do it more than this because we can't adjust anything up or down. So in order to adjust it, we have to remove everything. I mean, this really would be... It would be better if there was actually other motor mounts. Well, heck yeah, motor mounts. It'd be better if there were other mounts out there, but in our case, there just aren't any. There are no other motor mounts that start off lower. So, as I said before, the only other option is to completely rebed the entire stringer assembly for both sides to lower these mounts in. I guess technically we could shave off a good chunk of the flange on the bottom, and it probably would be fine. But there's not going to be enough there that's going to make the difference. That's the problem. It's like we need to make up an entire nut thickness worth of distance, and there's not enough material to do that using the flanges on the bottom. And yeah, there is a good chance we don't finish this weekend. We're going to keep going. I'm going to get this into place and go look in the coupler, see how we get going, and start charging some of my crap back up because everything's starting to die on me. It's been a while. All right, so I just took a quick look at the coupler in the back. I mean, the engine has to go back like 3 or 4 inches, but it does look like it does look like the way it's sitting right now is that we may be all right in the front side. Like, it looks like the back probably has to come up, and that's a lot easier to do with extra washers and shims in the back ones because the brackets just come right off and it's easy. So as long as the fronts are okay, we should be able to shim up the back up and down to get the back in play, and maybe we can actually do this close enough where we don't have to do the fronts again. Everything looks like right now I'm in line as best as I can possibly get it in this boat. But before we fully tighten down the coupler on the back end, we need to fully lock down the motor mounts in the front. So we've got them right here. There's 1, there's 2. Now you can tell that I've got this one. I've got the single hole on the back and this notch on the back. This one is the opposite way around, but right now everything is exactly where I want it to be, so we're not gonna second guess this. We're gonna go ahead and get our lag bolts, get these suckers bolted back in. This is essentially just fiberglass encased wood, so because of that we can just drill a pilot hole. I should have drill bits still here, and then just lag this sucker straight down into there, and then the same on the back side. We just need to get these locked in so that way when I go to do the back, the one back mount is twisted, so I need to twist it back in, but I don't want to try to move anything and then have the whole engine shift. So we're going to lock down the front first so that way nothing can move, and then we'll go through with our large thing here, and we'll tighten down our nuts and our washers and things on here. I do have lock washers for these. I don't have them on yet, so I'm going to put them on the top as well. So you can kind of see in there that, holy smokes, that's too much zoom. Sorry about that. So you can see in there, right there, I've got just Heck, I don't even think I've got a washer on that one. Anyway, we need to fix that. But the good news is we're basically on the home stretch, which is great. So Fix It Father's Day is done. As done as we can get it. So I'm about ready to go start the engine, and I'm not going to do it on camera because if I blow something up, I don't want you all to know how bad I did. But anyway, I did get everything back in there. Honestly, the only reason that I'm going to start the engine just to make sure everything still runs and everything and make sure everything works. I got to make sure I'm in neutral. I don't want to spin the prop yet. Like, I'm a little nervous to do that part, but we do have to try that. And then the other thing is the mounts only have one bolt in them. One mount has 2 bolts in, or one mount has 1.5 bolts in. It's got them bolt in the front, and the one in the back is halfway sunk, but I can't get a good angle on it. This should at least let me fire up the engine and make sure everything doesn't blow apart, is basically what we're doing. And as long as that happens, then next week I'll come back with some extra long drill bits. The problem is I can't get my drill in to pre-drill my hole, and since these mounts don't line up perfectly where the old holes were, I can't just sink them in that one. So we do need to pre-drill the hole, and I need many more extensions to be able to get down in from the angles I need to get into to get those in. But the big thing is the drill bit, and the only drill bits I had, I thought I had drill bits here, and the only one I had was quite literally the 1/4-inch drill bit, or maybe it's a little bit bigger, out of a hole saw bit. That was the only drill bit I could find. Actually, it's about the right size, maybe a touch on the small side, but it worked fine. But I can't get my drill in that little stubby drill bit into the back corner of all of these mounts. So, but for the most part, though, we should be done. We did run the engine, and I did run into one other problem, and that is in all of the engine moving around, I had completely forgot about the hose for the exhaust. So if you're not familiar, the exhaust actually does carry water through it. So when you're running your motor, it's a heat exchanger. The water comes through this exhaust manifold thingamajigger, and actually that's why you have water that spits out the back of the boat with the exhaust. That's why if you don't have water spitting out when your motor's running, you need to check your impeller because it might not be pulling water in and cooling things actively, including through the exhaust pipes. And in my case, I forgot that was all hooked up when we were moving the motor around, and I don't know when we did it, but basically we broke apart one of the exhaust hoses that goes from the manifold to the muffler to the thing and whatever. So when I started the motor, we were basically going to shower in the cockpit locker, which is all right. I mean, I knew there was a hole there. I saw the hole before. I just wanted to make sure the motor ran, and it wasn't like I was going to be running it enough where it was going to be spitting water so bad that we were going to sink. It was just enough to, spray around a little bit, but it was enough to make sure that the motor was running, wasn't vibrating necessarily or anything like that. It started, it ran smooth, and I was able to put it in gear and make sure that everything actually worked with the prop stuffing pack and all that fun stuff. And everything seems to be working fine. We seem to be pretty well lined up, and yeah, I'm very happy with that. So we're 95% there. Once that's done, and once I've got the new exhaust hose on, she's ready to go back into gear, and we'll see how that goes. So we're going to take all this stuff home that I can take home, get it out of here, clean up a bit, and then I'm going to go home early. I was going to stay up here overnight, but there's really nothing to do, and I'm just going to go home in the morning anyway, so I might as well just go home now. So take care, and we will see you next time. Have a good one.